We're live.
Todd Gurley.
Todd Gurley's
yeah,
still
existed,
like 26 or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's life comes at you fast, man. Like Todd Gurley used to.
Leather knees.
Yeah, that's
I forgot his
absolutely
name.
I got arthritis.
I literally forgot his name.
That's pretty bad when you forget Todd Gurley's name after he won people a ton of leagues.
Well, he had two outstanding seasons. He had two really good seasons.
People don't accept it. People don't accept the decline, man. Like they tip you off because the coaches will play the beat up old running back about 1 year, maybe 2 years longer than they actually should. And so you still get the fantasy points for a little while, but you start to notice, okay, this guy looks slower on tape. The efficiency numbers aren't as good, right? Like Ezekiel Elliott gave us a heads up before this year. He was like, hey guys, I'm kind of washed.
Yeah.
And then, but if you didn't trade him, you hold the bag. And I think Alvin Kamara kind of told us this year that he might be not what he used to be.
I think the Kamara's thing was more that the receptions were down.
Yeah.
And they used him
It's like his first year without 81 receptions.
Yeah, and they used him as a bell cow running back, which is no one asked for that ever. Literally, no one ever asked for that. We were completely fine with his usage. Like, we were like, just keep doing what you're doing, Sean. And Sean was like, well, look, I've already shit all over the salary cap. I'm clearly leaving after this year. I could give a fuck. Let's just run Alvin Kamara into the ground, that beautiful, beautiful man. And let's give him 240 rushing attempts for no obvious reason and 67 targets. Like, why did he turn into Ezekiel Elliott?
How much do you think the home team had to do with Sean Payton reliving his past life of actually having a year, of not working and him actually wanting to go back to that? Because he's like, damn, this isn't nearly as stressful. That 1 year was not nearly as stressful as this current year and not having a quarterback. I need to step away.
No, you know what he's doing? He's doing exactly the Urban Meyer thing, where Urban would step away because of a heart attack. Even whatever. Anyway, he would step away because of a heart attack after, the NCAA started sniffing around and they were going to clearly hit them with fucking sanctions. Like, there's a bunch of coaches that have done that. Rick Pitino, every time he'd leave somewhere, you know what I mean? And then wherever he left would get banned from the tournament for, 5 lifetimes. That's what Sean Payton did. I was looking at the salary cap today. It is awful. Like, they need to just burn that whole team to the ground, and just take all the hits this year and not restructure.
They did something illegal. Like, something happened there that's not legal. I don't know if it's money laundering or embezzlement or fraud, but one of those crimes that people get arrested for on Billions or Succession or any of those shows.
I thought you were
they committed
Ozark.
Multiple of those crimes. You never watch any of those shows, Shane?
Yeah, I watch Ozark.
Oh yeah, so I'm in 3 episodes now of Ozark. You watching Ozark, Chase?
I probably will be able to get to it in about a couple weeks or so. I've got some end of the season stuff to do, so as soon as the Super Bowl's over, I might actually go check it out.
Tell you what, man, that show is every episode's like a heart attack.
I love talking about this. Put up Dave's comment. It's a great point.
Hold on 1 second, because I'm
not the one that says
that page.
Bong, the other one. There we go. Yeah, so this is Harstad, who, if you don't follow Adam Harstad, he's literally the GOAT. But basically, running backs, wide receivers, he has this article and he has a whole metaphor that I won't get into because I'll talk for 10 minutes and we haven't even hit the theme song yet. But wide receivers, essentially, their median projection, elite ones, stays the same every single year until they die very unexpectedly. So, Keenan Allen next year, you should just project him to be what he's always been, and you should keep projecting to be what he's always been, but then eventually he's just going to fall off the face of the earth. It might be next year, it might be 5 years from now. You don't know. But running backs, usually you'll see a slight decline, and then the bottom falls out. So, basically, with, in terms of how you're approaching your running backs, once they hit past 26, once they're on that second contract, you need to keep your nose to the ground, man. You either need to grind some film, you need to grind the efficiency stats, you need to look under the hood, you need to see if there's any grease spilling up from the engine, because then it gets ugly real fast.
Agreed. We've seen it with running back after running back that are not named Raheem Mostert, essentially, which, ended up breaking down relatively quick if he actually ever got started in the first place. But y'all ready to kick this episode off?
Do it.
Let's do it.
All right, let's go.
Intervention. Now here to intervene with your fantasy life, Shane Manila, Jacob Sanderson, and Chase Vernon.
What's up, everybody? Welcome on into another episode of Fantasy Intervention coming at y'all. I am your host, Chase.
Why can't I be the host?
FF_intervention. And I am joined by the co-host at Shane is the worst. Over there with Shane. And of course, Jacob at
I'm the host.
_RTDB. Shane, if you were the host,
Shane,
these episodes will last 3 hours.
How to make a show sheet. You don't know how to read a show sheet. You don't know what a show sheet is.
I have made several show sheets in my time, young man.
For your 5-minute long show?
Yes. Well, that show keeps getting longer and longer.
Is it Dynasty Trades in 15 now?
It started out as Dynasty Trades in 5, and now it's going to be 5 Dynasty Trades.
Well, so here's a little funny story, right? We were talking last night, and Chase is or not Chase, excuse me. Clay.
I forget his name too.
Clay is just talking
Who's
about
Clay?
Clay's co-host on Dynasty Trades in 5.
Oh, okay.
He was talking about how this was basically just his shtick, not his shtick, which is his hook to get us in. Me and Scott was just telling us it would be 5 minutes, but he also owns Dynasty Trades in 10 and Dynasty Trades in 15. So this is clearly all just a setup.
I'm gonna buy I'm gonna buy the weird numbers. Dynasty Trades in 7 minutes and 42 seconds.
I like that.
Dynasty Trades in 11 minutes and 31 seconds.
And Dynasty Trades. You guys should narrow the market between 7-minute abs and 7-minute trades, and just do 7-minute trades and abs.
Trades and abs.
Dynasty waiver ads in 34 minutes and 31 seconds.
I'd kill myself if I had to.
Dynasty 28th round startup picks in 28 minutes.
Oh.
Wait. You would kill yourself if you had to talk about Dynasty Trades that long?
No, waivers for a half an hour. Dynasty waivers, dude. You know what Dynasty waivers are like? It's literally like just going through like homeless people.
Shai Smith can have a breakout second year.
Oh my god!
I think Chase should do a show on Dynasty waivers because Chase loves terrible players more than anyone I know. So
I can do it. I can do it. I can kill that show.
Waivers.
I could absolutely kill that show. That show would be my bitch. I promise you that.
Chase is like a sturgeon. He's the ultimate bottom feeder of the Dynasty community.
I can't help it that I love 50-person rosters. Okay, I need 20 taxi squads. I need 10 more additional bench spots more than what anybody else has.
All right, so let's get into the show. Big show
I was just about to say that.
I want to wrap it up by 9:25.
Yeah, okay. So I want to talk a little bit about Dynasty and the valuations that we have this early in the year, because a lot of times we have these Dynasty trades.
Dynasty intervention?
Yes. Yeah. Well, the Dynasty evaluations. The key word was evaluations, right? It was just the Dynasty was to describe what kind of evaluations that we have. And this time of year, people do like to make trades. They like to try and guess how players are going to end up and where they're going to end up at, and who they're going to be playing with.
Don't call it guessing, because if we call it forecasting, we sound like we're not guessing. So call it forecasting.
Okay, yeah. Forecasting is
projecting a probabilistic range of outcomes.
Yeah. Well, it's in his range of outcomes to be a wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 105.
My hypothesis says. So, anyways, when it comes to this stuff, you did bring up
and take a look at it.
When you sit down and you take a look at it, the reality of the situation is we do have educated guesses behind a lot of this stuff. So we've been doing this stuff for a long time. We've been doing tons of research. I mean, Shane has been doing rankings for about 15 years now when it comes to these rankings. So Shane, I'm going to let you start out.
Shane's too modest. I want to intro Shane a little bit further, actually. People don't know this, but Shane's first podcast was actually Dynasty Trades on Plymouth Rock. And then he relaunched and he had a second show called Dynasty Trades on Ellis Island, converting immigrants to fantasy football.
Yeah, Plymouth Rock didn't work out, so we had to try again a few years later. I hate rankings. I loathe rankings. I loathe doing rankings. Rankings are the lowest form of clickbait that there is. And I don't
engagement farming.
And there's much worse engagement farming. Who's your Mount Rushmore of catch-ups?
My hands are clean on this one.
But is that not engagement farming? I don't know what it is. I got to be honest with you. But definitely my Mount Rushmore of catch-ups are catch-up and other catch-up.
The bare naked lady saying about Dijon ketchup.
Oh, all the fancy catch-ups. I understand.
Canada.
Rankings are fine. If you're going to do rankings, please make sure you do tiers. Rankings without tiers are just completely asinine. The reason I don't like rankings is because, look, I'm a reactionary type dude. So if I had rankings, I would want to go update them literally every night, because something would run through my mind and I would go, no, this is why I need to move Jamison Crowder up from wide receiver 115 to 112. Because I've done rankings before, and that's basically like where I couldn't stop thinking about it and changing it. So I just had to I couldn't do them anymore.
Yeah. And tiers is what kind of prevents that from being, too reactionary, is allowing yourself to stick in tiers and in areas where players are essentially like the same value.
Well, can we say something though? Remember, only stick your tiers in areas when you have consent. That's
very true. And in areas where it makes sense, because essentially if you go sticking it into areas that just doesn't make sense, you know what? We'll digress from that. Let's go ahead and go to Jacob real quick. I mean, Jacob, when it comes to your rankings, I know you rank by tiers, but I mean, is there something that could move a player from one tier to another at this time of year?
Well, first off, I debuted something in season this year that I'm going to stick with in the new season. I'm going to find a way to format it nicer, but I'm going to stick with it where I'm doing what's called tiers and clusters. So tiers are based on the value, and then I'm also going to do clusters within tiers. So in the sense, like CeeDee Lamb and Devontae Adams are in the same tier, but obviously they're very different in terms of their value window, right? Like Devontae Adams has productive value very much squished towards the near term, whereas CeeDee Lamb's is more spread out or more towards the late term. So like depending on what situation your team is in, of course, like one of those might make a lot more sense than the other. And so for me, like ranking a Lamb versus an Adams is like kind of a pointless endeavor, because it totally depends where your team is.
Yep.
So what I did last time is I clustered them into players where the productive value is set primarily beyond the current year, players where the productive value is set primarily within the current year, and then sort of players somewhere in the middle. And I'm going to come up with better numerical ways to show this and better ways to show this when it's graphed out. But that's been something I've been working on starting last year, was to do tiers and clusters. But
I like your clusters idea, because as a member of the Dynasty community, I know how we feel about scatter charts and anything with lines in it. So if you can combine all those things, it's going to be a hit, especially if it's confusing.
The only fear is when you make charts look like vaginas, and then people get really mad at you.
I thought that was maybe some of the best graphs and charts I've ever seen in my life, and I was mad when he went back and changed them.
I've missed that.
Who did that? Too long.
Well, there is that. I mean, I did spend a little alone time with his Twitter graphs, but whatever. You missed that
a little bit. I hope you were. I really hope you weren't in your kid's bedroom for that one.
No. You missed that last year. You missed that, Chase.
I missed that.
Who did the graphs where they look like vaginas? And that
was Cooper Adams, the smartest man in the universe. Cooper,
he didn't realize it because he was just so honed in on his work. But as soon as you saw it, you were like, "Why is he tweeting out like vaginas?"
I just remember. Okay, so first of all, Cooper, if you ever watch the show, know that like I love you, and you know that I love you. But like I just remember him putting out a quote tweet like 3 days later. He's like, "Hi everyone. I understand that these are funny in a way that I didn't realize at first, but also I worked really hard on these, so I hope that you don't all take fun of them for looking like vaginas." Anyway,
I gotta be honest with you. It provided great data, and it looked like a vagina. Well, I don't see how that could be a bad thing. Right?
2 for 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, let's get back on track here.
So, vagina clusters.
About how
that's really what we
move
need to focus on.
Yeah, I would say at the top end, it would be pretty hard. I think the only way. Fuck. Okay. At the top end, it would be rather difficult for a player to actually change tiers, in my opinion, at this stage of the offseason. The only way that I would really change players from one tier to another at this stage is honestly if I just look at it and I was like, oh, wow, I was just super wrong. Which happens like quite frequently. And that's the nice part of the offseason is you get to have a little bit more time to simmer on your priors and see where your biases lie and where you might want to make changes. But I kind of have the rule for rookies, and I would apply it in general to regular vet ranks too, where, I always say with rookies, okay, after landing spot, I'm happy to move up and around in a tier based on landing spot, but I'm not going to totally switch tiers based on the landing spot. And I feel similarly about this stage. Like there's going to be players that are impacted by free agent signings, by trades, etc. But to me, like I think we have to have some level of a broad outlook, especially on how good of a player is long-term, where we don't want to be completely changing everything we think about a player, just because of who they get at quarterback or whatever. So I try to move within the tier.
And here's the thing too, though. And if you are constantly making those changes to a player, then they're not the player you thought they were. Like if you're moving a player up from tier 1 to tier 3, you let them off the hook. They are who we thought they were.
You want to crown them? You can crown their hats.
I'm sorry. I got to let the police force fly by my apartment complex first.
Yeah, I agree with you like 100%. And I like playing within the tiers, which is something I talked about. But obviously age has a big piece to do with this. And I think I look more into it than anybody else does when it comes to their situations. I want to see a player in a system that features, a slot receiver, features an outside receiver, features the running back more often. Like, for example, we were just talking about prior to the show. I think it's going to have a lot bigger effect than what a lot of people realize with Alvin Kamara, and Sean Payton moving on. I mean, that's a massive blow to Alvin Kamara and his dynasty ranking moving forward, because guess what? Like if a quarterback or if a head coach comes in, somebody like Brian Dable, for example, who doesn't utilize the running backs in the receiving game as much, although they still get fantasy points. To be
fair, for about half that time, his running back was Zach Moss, and I wouldn't utilize him in the receiving game either.
Yeah. Brian Dable might have been a bad example because I actually have a lot of good stats on Brian Dable's running backs. But regardless, if a coach comes in that does not use a running back in the receiving game as often, I mean, that could hinder running back or whatever, the scenario could be. So, I mean, is there anything else that you guys look at this time of year, such as like a team's salary cap, like Christian Kirk, for example, right? In Arizona. Christian Kirk, there's a good chance that he commands at least $12 million, per year moving forward, but he's not worth $12 million. However, there will be a team that pays him that. Arizona cannot afford to pay him that. There's no chance in hell they'll be able to. Is Christian Kirk moving on a likely thing for you? And would that reduce his value or increase it possibly?
He can't. He's not a good player. I mean, at the NFL level. So
thanks, Shane. I was using him as an example.
I'm just saying. So, your example speaks to a point, though. So, if it's a player like Christian Kirk, I don't really give a fuck where he lands. Like we do that landing spot thing, and we think the landing spot is going to make a player good when it's not. If a player is legitimately not good at football, or let me rephrase that, if they're not a viable fantasy asset, generally they're not going to become one just because of situation at wide receiver. Running back, it can happen, obviously. Yeah. But even then, you don't want to put too much stock in it, like Mike Davis going to Atlanta last year and people coming all over themselves because they like, oh, he's only back there. Situation's great. Well, yeah, but he's been terrible at football his entire career. So you want to look at situation, obviously, but like Rondell Moore, Dave's bringing up Rondell Moore. I think people are going to assume Rondell Moore is going to break out because Christian Kirk's leaving and AJ Green is probably going to go somewhere else because he's old. But I would look more at, well, what target share did he command this year? Like, I go to the Peter Howard school of you earn your targets. Rondell Moore didn't earn shit this year, even when given the opportunity. So I don't automatically assume, well, he's going to be the wide receiver 2 or a wide receiver 2 in Arizona now.
I believe he had a higher.
Okay, I have I have a point on the Rondell thing and the target earning that is interesting. So I want to get into that actually too. But and yeah, you're right, Dave. Shane doesn't like people to realize that he's smart in between all of the jokes, but he's extremely sharp.
I mean, he has been podcasting since,
Plymouth Rock.
Since Plymouth Rock, right?
Yeah.
Dave makes a great point with running backs. I mean, running backs are running backs, right? Like they're a lot more volume dependent for sure. I think what people should try to do with these players is you really, really need to think about the range of outcomes on these players. I wrote about in my series last year when I was writing for, of course, Fantasy Intervention. In my Rebuilder series, I talked about these Schrodinger candidates, right? So people know Schrodinger's cat for the Big Bang Theory. The cat's either alive or dead, but you don't know which. And talked about all these players where they're really dependent on a binary outcome, right? Yeah, Shane?
I just wanted to point out that everyone in fantasy football uses that analogy incorrectly, but go ahead.
Okay, how do you like it used?
No, we'll get into that.
How do you like it?
Well, it was really more about we'll get into it later.
Okay. Well, anyway, Schrodinger's cat was a cat. It's either alive or dead. And a lot of these players, they have this kind of similar outlooks going into free agency, going into the draft, right? Like you think of a James Robinson. It's like we know that he's going to be like last year, right? We know that he's going to be deeply diminished if they draft a running back, and we know that he's going to be he's going to get he's going to be better off if they don't draft a running back. But we don't know if they're going to do that yet. And so you have to sort of think, okay, what's the likelihood on this binary outcome? Where do they land on each? And a lot of people, it just seems, make assumptions, right? They say, okay, I think that, Melvin Gordon is going to sign elsewhere. And so I'm just ranking Javonte as if, Melvin Gordon is already on a plane somewhere else, right? Or people will be like, well, I think Melvin is going to re-sign in Denver. So then they're ranking Javonte lower. It's like, in reality, nobody has any clue exactly what's going to happen in Denver. You can hedge and you can have ideas about it. But I think people need to rank these guys somewhere in the middle. And I think the most important thing is people just are way too sure of themselves, and the market seems to take weirdly inconsistent positions. Like the Arizona running backs are a great example right now. So this goes into best. I'm more familiar with
right meow.
Right meow. I'm going to bring up best ball ADP, which Shane might leave the show, so I hope he stays with us. But James
it's not
Conner,
best ball
for instance,
IDP,
right now,
ADP, right?
It's not IDP, ADP.
Okay.
What's up, IDP Army? What's going on?
What's up, IDP Army? I love that. Hey, Jordan. Anyway, so James Conner, for instance, right now is going around 5. Chase Edmonds is going around 8. We know that when both players were on the field, their roles were basically interchangeable. Edmonds had more snaps, got more targets. Conner had the goal line work, whatever. But do we know who's more likely to re-sign in Arizona? I have no idea. To me, they might sign both. They might sign one. They might sign neither. I have no idea. But the idea, okay. But the idea that Conner, right? And basically, why do people like Conner so much more than them? Well, he had a really high touchdown rate, and then Edmonds missed more games than Conner did, right? So I think that's pretty much the reason. Even though last year at this time, everybody liked Evans way more than like Conner, right? It doesn't really. So to me, it's like if you want to gamble on, who's going to benefit from re-signing in Arizona and maybe being the only one, like I would just way rather do it at the cheaper price point on the younger player with Evans than with Conner, because ultimately it's kind of the same bet, and you're just trying to figure that out probabilistically. So that's where I'm looking at rankings. I'm trying to figure out how can I design my rankings now, even knowing that I have to move things later because I know there's going to be events that happen, but I'm trying to split the difference. I'm trying to find that middle range versus me making an assumption and then just ranking as though my assumption is going to happen 100% of the time.
So obviously that definitely will give you an edge, right? Like when it comes to rankings or when it comes to acquiring players, right? That people might have ranked lower than what it should be, essentially is what I'm trying to specifically get at. Where can you find values across the community? So is there any other thing that could give you an edge prior to this offseason starting when trying to acquire players that might be higher or lower ranked? Maybe, selling players that are higher ranked and getting rid of players that are lower ranked.
Just go contrary to the market. I mean, honestly, what I found most times works is just going contrary to the market. Like everybody hates CD Lamb now, right? So they caught up with my patron chat from like a month ago and realized that he's not an elite wide receiver. So now the pendulum starts to swing, and it's like, well, I don't think he's even that good. Like I mean, he's basically Jerry Jeudy. Like, you wait till it gets to that point, right? And then you start going, oh, okay.
Yeah, I already sent out one of those tweets a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, just I like to go contrary.
How much would you add to CeeDee Lamb for Gabe Davis?
Oh, I think at least two firsts.
Jeez, dude, I saw some of the trades. Actually, I saw it because of Shane commenting on something, and it was the trades that have gone down for DLF for Gabe Davis. It was both of them had 2023 firsts, I believe.
DLF means dynasty teams I'd like to fuck, right?
Exactly. And then the other one had a 2023, but it also had like a significant player attached. And my mind was split. Shane, do you remember who that was?
I don't. The fact that you got a 2023 first alone for Gabe Davis
is insane.
Is magical. Like, you have a unicorn penis. Like, I don't even know how you pulled that off. That is just amazing.
Well, that's why that trade was on
God
Tilf.
himself.
God.
I can't. All right.
Wait, can we talk about this Davis thing? Because Shane brought up a point with Rondell, and now the Davis thing. And I wanted to get Shane's take on this. And yours, Chase. But we've talked about Rondell before, so I think I know yours a little bit more.
Yeah, so, of course. I like Gabe Davis, so I always have.
Of course. Every player that's ever been drafted on round 3, Chase.
I actually liked Isaiah Hodgins more than I liked Gabe Davis, but then once the injury happened, I liked Gabe Davis more than Isaiah.
I went through a similar journey, honestly. So the targets thing. So everybody mostly outside of like the crazy people are on board with the idea of targets being earned, right? But now I think what's an interesting discussion, and I'm going to be doing a big study on this, but I've been going back and forth with Cooper about this on Twitter and others, is to what extent are routes earned? Because I think we can all look at a guy, right? We talk about this efficiency versus volume, right? And so there's examples like a Brian Edwards and Mikko Hardman and Jalen Guyton, right? These guys who don't earn any targets on their routes, but they have a high yards per target. They have a high efficiency per target. And those used to be guys that people used to get really excited about. I think we've now come a long way as a community where we've now shunned those guys. We look at these guys, we say, yeah, but if you can't earn volume, right? But what about a Gabe Davis who 22% targets per route on a high ADOT? The issue was he wasn't running enough routes. And Rondell Moore, similar. Right now, his ADOT is like -6. However, similar where when he's on the field, he's getting a lot of targets on his routes. And I think it's really nuanced in this discussion in terms of when we want to take the targets per route and translate it, when we don't. And I could go on about that for like an hour and people don't care. But I was curious getting your take on this.
Honestly, I want to see the data on it because I don't think there's been enough study on it, honestly. Because people have not just started talking about, but routes run, things like that, targets while on targets per route run, things like that. Like, I don't want to say they're newer stats, but they've only been discussed in the last couple of years in Dynasty, and I haven't seen anything around it, like work-wise. Since you're doing it, that'll be great to show me, like, is that an indicator of anything? Because, it's great if you're getting, a 40% target share every time you run a route, but if you only run 5 routes a game, you know what I mean? So I would like to see if there's any correlation there at all and what can be taken away from it. That's why I tend to stick to just raw target share. You know what I mean? Because look, all things being equal at the end of the day, I don't care if you run 40 routes if you only get 4 targets. I don't care if you run 15 routes but get 10 targets. At the end of the day, if it's, oh Jesus, I said that twice in a row. When you take a seat and look at it,
I was waiting for it.
Damn it.
Well, you know why you said that, right? Is because you're actually in my wheelhouse. You're in the wheelhouse of highly efficient players that don't earn routes, which is essentially the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round wide receivers. You guys are in my
who generally, for the most part, aren't viable fantasy assets. They're
True.
Guys that they'll have a spike week. Like Gabe Davis had 4 touchdowns, right? He's going to live off of that for at least another year. So I don't care if he's getting a target on 80% of his routes if he's running 5 routes a game. Obviously, he's running a little more than that, and he's not getting 80% target share on his routes run. But honestly, before I dismiss it, I want to see someone smarter than me put together some numbers and data around it. Jacob's smarter than me, so I'll wait for that to be put out by Jacob.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Shane. So Anyways, back to the point that I was making was we have somebody like Mikko Hardman, right? Where, he has a advantageous matchup over there with the Bengals this week, and it's advantageous to his situation. We briefly talked about it last night, but actually dove into the numbers today to kind of back the statistics that I was talking about last night of why I wanted to play Mikko Hardman in DFS over Byron Pringle. So the reason why I wanted to play Mikko Hardman wasn't just because of ownership, but because anytime that Mikko Hardman is on the field since week 10, I believe it was, or maybe it was week 11, he played less snaps, but his efficiency has gone up because they have utilized him more when he's on the field, which is exactly what Jacob was talking about. However, if Mikko Hardman is not seeing 25 snaps a game or so, he's not going to put up numbers that are relevant to fantasy. So then you have to dive into how bad is this defense and how quick does the offense score and how is their schedule essentially applying, which to Dynasty, it really doesn't matter as much. However, if you believe that a team is going to have a bad defense, for a year, you could see spike weeks from Mikko Hardman because although he does play an average of 13 snaps per game since week 11 or so, and he's giving you a handful of, usable fantasy weeks for dynasty purposes, those weeks were when he saw an increased amount of snaps because he saw increased opportunities and his target share didn't change as much, along with the fact that he was able to see premium targets, which is the air yards that people used to love, right? It's the targets inside the red zone. It's the usage. I mean, he's seen an insane amount of red zone usage over the past 5 or 6 weeks as well. So although he's seen a less amount of snaps, he is getting utilized more often. It doesn't matter for fantasy unless that defense is going to allow other teams to score quickly and as long as both teams have a high, at least rate of play or allow explosive plays to happen. Because if you're not going to see touchdown after touchdown, if you're not going to see score after score in a game, you're never going to get that usage out of a player like Mikko Hardman unless he throws on some weight and becomes the next Deebo Samuel. Which isn't going to happen, by the way.
Yes, while you're bringing up
should
McCall
be heated
Hardman
off the show for the next Deebo Samuel thing. But I think I have an intuition about this, and maybe it'll be proven wrong. My hypothesis about this is that I think that there's a more viable case for this targets per route run translatability for a guy like a Gabe Davis, who when he's out there basically just plays normal wide receiver, right? Like they're not using him on end arounds and jet sweeps and gadgety stuff. My hesitation was someone like a Rondell Moore or like a Kadarius Toney, who similarly had a really high TPRR, but we're looking at, okay, can that translate if he gets the larger role? Will he get the larger role? Is that he's getting a lot of scheme touches, right? And that's not just by accident. It's not like they're saying, oh, these are the 30% of the routes that we have Rondell Moore on the field for. And so randomly he'll get X amount of scheme touches. It's like, no, they're coming up with the game. They're saying we want 3 jet sweeps to Rondell Moore. Those are going to be the plays that he's on the field for. If he's on the field for the other 70% of snaps, there's no guarantee that now he's going to get 8 jet sweeps. Like that's probably not going to happen. So, I'm going to look at it and try to factor out screens and factor out swing passes and see if we can look at stuff like that. Whereas with Gabe Davis, you look at it and it's like, man, like when he was deployed, if we look at his ADOT, if we look at his Whopper, if we look at his target share, we can say, okay, he was pretty much deployed in a similar fashion as Emmanuel Sanders in terms of where his targets were, where he was running his routes from. He was just earning more targets and being more efficient with them. And so like probably he was just better and the coaches were old.
But why do we have like a player like Deebo Samuel, right? Like why do we miss on Deebo Samuel this year? Because we missed bad on Deebo Samuel this year. A lot of people did, just like we missed on Cooper Kupp. But Deebo Samuel is getting utilized in a role where the scheme actually benefits his skill set. So why should we discount players that are like Rondell Moore?
But you're not. Deebo's a really bad example because no one's been used like Deebo has.
No, he's a complete outlier. He's a complete outlier.
That's what I'm saying. Like he's gotten a full share of wide receiver targets.
He was a targets per route run god.
He hasn't been getting a full share of wide receiver targets as of late. He hasn't.
No,
he's been dwindling down.
Because now he's also getting basically a half share of running back snaps.
No, he's only seeing like 10 to 15 a game on running back snaps, and he's not getting a carry on every single one.
Look, he's seeing 10 to 15 snaps in the backfield, which means he's not seeing 10 to 15 routes run.
Yeah, but a carry is worth 2 points. like one target is worth 2.5x carries. So if he gets 5 carries a game, that's like getting 2 extra targets a game, which is about like getting 8 extra routes a game. Like that's extremely valuable.
So here's my only thing is like I don't think we can compare Rondell and Debo because they haven't even shown that they can use or they have any intentions of using Rondell as a wide receiver. And the difference is Debo has been a wide receiver.
He's gotten targets. He actually, I believe, saw more targets than Rashad Bateman did this year.
Rashad
Bateman missed 5 games.
Yeah. His target share was right around 10%.
He still played less snaps. He still played less snaps.
I'm sorry. His target share was
He's on a wide
11%. 11%. He had 11% target share on a team with Christian Kirk, AJ Green, the ghost of DeAndre Hopkins, and
don't forget
that's
Anton
better
Wesley.
than the Baltimore Ravens.
Better. I mean,
the concerning part for Rondell, right? The concerning part for Rondell Moore to me is what happened when Hopkins went down. Like, I was pretty on board with the Rondell thing when Hopkins was there because it was like, all right, AJ Green has a role. I know like he's dusty and old, but he has a role on an NFL team, which is just to go there and eat coverage, basically be a traffic cone. And then Hopkins is Hopkins and Kirk's a viable player, right? So I understood it from that perspective. Okay, Rondell's going to be the gadget guy. They want to use a little bit more 11 personnel. But man, like when Hopkins was out and they were like, nope, we're just going to use Anton Wesley as the outside receiver. Like to me, that's like really unfortunate. That they didn't decide to elevate Rondell at that point, because even if Kirk goes and Green goes, like they're going to have other Anton Wesleys.
Shane, I hate you for sending that tweet backstage, but yes, let's go ahead and move on off this. Let's go ahead and check out the rankings from last year from Jacob. He put together these rankings on February 2nd of last year.
Can you put them up on the screen?
Can
you share?
What's up? Oh, they're coming up. They're coming up.
Can you make that bigger? I am really
These
not
are from February, by the way. These are old as hell.
February 2nd.
Yeah.
So anyways, like this is something as to where like, hey, you need to explore where we fucked up. We need to figure out how we can get better with rankings. So I kind of want to dive into this and talk about, like where Jacob might have messed up a little bit, which honestly he did a phenomenal job, and most of these did actually stick.
It was a year ago.
Either way, it's something as to where like we can look at, and we're about to bash my rankings, by the way. So my rankings are going to go a lot worse than your rankings are going to go. Let's talk about what you did a year ago. So
can we get Rager off of this list? I'd like to get Rager off.
I want Rager, and also the worst aspect of yours was your wide receiver 40s, but that's not even on the list. So
wait, where's Rager on this list?
He's high, unfortunately. So again, what the big note on this is that it's also February, and we knew like nothing about the rookies. So my like only plea is people should ignore the freaking rookies in these ranks.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
We're talking about
ranking right now.
Well, here's one thing you can do, right? And we did this on the Dynasty Trades HQ when we actually did rankings. We looked at like who was in the top 12 before the season. We looked at who was top 12 wide receiver, running back, blah, 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 and who was going to fall out and who would take their place. And for wide receiver, we just went default rookie wide receiver 1. I'm just going to stick default rookie wide receiver 1's name somewhere in this. Definitely ahead of Jalen Rager.
So why wouldn't this
probably in the top 15 or so.
Why wouldn't this happen for running backs too?
You could probably do the same thing for running back too, depending on the class. Like I'll put Breece Hall right now. I'll put him as a top 10 running back. I have no problem at all doing that. Sight unseen of where he's going to land.
Yes, thanks for the tip, Dave. I will try to look at that. And I think, Shane, I'd almost rather do the opposite. Like, I mean, I'm certainly not all that comfortable in my ability to evaluate wide receivers in February, but I would say I'm more comfortable evaluating wide receivers in February than running backs. Like maybe the top 2, right? Like Spiller and Hall and maybe Walker, who we can be comfortable going in round 2. But after those 3, I'm like,
no,
drafted.
No. I'm just talking about for top end. Like that's all I would do.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even attempt to, honestly, after like running back 3, I would just give up. Like, cause this class is going to be, it no matter what, it's going to be some order of Walker, Spiller, and Breece Hall. I'd comfortably rank all three of them in top 15 for next year. And then, as they actually get draft capital, combine, and all that good stuff that happens, and then actually attach their names to an actual spot, an actual ranking.
Yeah, I'm with that.
Objectively, and maybe I'm I'm not remembering this correctly, but I feel like Jonathan Taylor was not in the top 3 or 4 prior to the rookie rankings of 2020. So like Jonathan Taylor, I think was behind guys like Cam Akers. I think he was behind guys, not CH, because CH rose after the draft. But I think it took the combine or maybe the pro day for Jonathan Taylor to really take off. Am I correct on that one? Because I know I always had Swift number 1.
No, people were
for some, yes, not in analytics world.
Yeah, what happened?
Well, we didn't have his analytics. We had his analytics.
We had his
analytics. We had his production. We had the analytics.
We didn't have his. But the analytics department didn't like the fact that he didn't catch passes.
Well, yeah, but that's.
I'm telling you, Jonathan Taylor is way out.
10.3%.
He was a top.
Jonathan Taylor's. This. Okay, now I'm going to get into a rant. This Jonathan Taylor pass catching. This Jonathan Taylor didn't catch passes myth is one of the most aggravating things, and not because of Taylor, because everyone knows Taylor's good enough, but because it has damaging effects going forward. Where I've already seen people say, "Oh, Kenneth Walker is going to be fine because Jonathan Taylor didn't catch passes, and Jonathan Taylor had a 10.3% target share. That's a higher target share than Devontae Williams. It's a higher target share than Melvin Gordon. Wisconsin did not throw a lot of passes. You can't judge a running back's ability to catch passes by how much their offense threw just in raw volume. You have to look at their target share. Jonathan Taylor's target share was entirely adequate. It wasn't exemplary, but it was totally adequate. Kenneth Walker is a totally different case. I mean, he doesn't even have – he has like half the running back catches of running backs on his own team. He's down at like a 4.5% share. It's just totally different. So the Taylor thing, I think, people that didn't like his raw pass catching, I think they're looking at the wrong shit, frankly. And Jonathan Taylor, I had Swift pre-draft as my RB1 as well, but Jonathan Taylor was always the real deal.
I can't wait for these rookie breakdown episodes. I cannot.
And Jonathan Taylor was the RB1 of the class after he went to the combine and turned in basically Saquon Barkley numbers. Then CEH got drafted in the first round to Kansas City, and we all talked ourselves into, well, did you see what he did at LSU last year? And he has first round draft capital. Stupid. And well, I mean, look, I understand the reasoning behind it. You go, Andy Reid, Brian Westbrook. This is the next Brian Westbrook. You know what I mean? And he did have 70 receptions at LSU. So you expected 60, that,
wasn't it?
Okay, 60. You expected that to happen. The smart play would have just been, let me trade back from CEH and get Jonathan's Taylor and extra. But we all didn't make that choice. And looking in hindsight, we probably should have went with the guy that has the Saquon Barkley.
DeAndre Swift
athletic profile.
So, all right. So let's go ahead and move on from rookies because we don't know anything about the rookies anyways right now. I'm sure you could put, like you talked about, CJ Spiller, Bryce Hall in there. But let's talk about the rankings that Jacob does have up here. Obviously, Deshaun Watson, we need to take out. We never saw that one coming. No idea. You have Patrick Mahomes at number 1. Josh Allen, number 2, exactly how I had it. I actually had Kyler Murray, number 3, with Dak Prescott, number 4. So you were a little bit lower on that. I mean, overall, everything kind of panned out. But Trevor Lawrence is something that sticks out to me. Not because you were wrong at ranking him here, because we had no idea that Urban Meyer, I don't think at this time at least. Maybe we had a slight idea. But, I mean, we didn't know Urban Meyer was going to be that bad. So Trevor Lawrence obviously had this awkward landing situation. It could end up being fixed. Obviously, that remains to be seen. Is Trevor Lawrence, where does he rank right now for you? And would you have changed this ranking knowing what you know now? Or do you think that moving forward, he still fits there?
No, I'd bring Lawrence down. I mean, the guy I'd bring way up is Lance. Now, to be clear, like when the draft actually happened, and actually even before the draft actually happened, even once you started seeing mock drafts and you started seeing that, okay, Trey Lance is going to be a first-round pick, like he skyrocketed up the board for me. He was way down in this one because it was February, and I was trying to gauge it. I was like, man, if this guy goes in the top 10, like I'm going to want all of them, but he might not even go in the first round. Like people weren't 100% sure what was going to happen with Lance. Going forward, like I would move Lawrence down. I mean, clearly behind Prescott, behind Burrow. I would rather have Russell Wilson than Lawrence right now. And then I would rather have Lance over Lawrence. I would still rather have Lawrence than Fields, strictly because Fields is now in a spot where he was a mid-first round pick, not an early first-round pick, and his coach and his GM didn't draft him. So I think Fields is a little bit closer to like a Jalen Hurts, where now my priors on Fields were stronger than for Hurts. However, I have fears with Fields that if my priors are wrong, this is where I talked about it, right? I talked about don't just assume that your assumptions are correct, right? My assumption is that Justin Fields will be very good. I expect him to be very good. I liked him as a prospect, but I have been wrong before, as you can see on these rankings. I'm wrong constantly. And if you pulled up anybody else's rankings from February, you would see that they are also wrong.
I don't know that you are. I don't know that you are. I mean, when we talk about dynasty value,
like defend it or talk about that. I just mean that people make mistakes all the time, right? Like they do. All of us do. And it's impossible not to. But with Fields, I think my issue there is just, what if I'm wrong? What if he actually just isn't very good this year? Are they going to give him year 3 with a totally new staff there? So that's why I would keep Lawrence. My biggest issue with Lawrence, honestly, is not the fact that he was terrible. It's that he didn't run very much. Because to me, I expected more rushing from Lawrence. Maybe he gets that with a new coach. But I also, if they're hiring Byron Leftwich, I talked about this on the show with Tom last night. I hate that hire. Like Byron Leftwich has spent his coaching career with Bruce Arians and Tom Brady. I don't think we know what Byron Leftwich is yet as a standalone offensive mind. But what we do know is that he comes from this Arians system, which is extremely complicated to run and forces you to make a lot of reads. Lawrence did not make a lot of reads in college. It was generally a pre-read offense.
I hate it.
And then now he has to come into a new system, third system in 3 years, that's notoriously complicated, that leads to a lot of interceptions down the field. And now you're going to potentially just break this guy. I'm nervous about the Leftwich hire.
With a bad offensive line, might I add. Shane, do you have anything else to add about the quarterback, rankings, or would you like to start us off with a running back observation?
I mean,
just maximize it.
I mean, the only thing as far as running backs, and I'll just beat this. I mean, no. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, Barkley, I would have been lower on than Jacob, but I'm generally lower on old running backs anyway. And Saquon's not old, but his body's old because he's injured literally all the time. And CMC's moving down that path too.
Who's your RB2 right now? Is it not CMC? Because
no.
that one, because even with missing the whole year, I stand by CMC at 2. I would take CMC.
I have him at 3.
I'd take Swift.
Or maybe
I have
4 or 5. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's Taylor.
Okay, let's debate this tier. Actually, let's debate this.
No, because my rankings are coming up.
Well, okay, we can integrate them into the conversation.
We all have Taylor at 1, right? We all have Taylor at 1, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think an interesting tier right now is 2 through 5, because I think most people agree on who the names are, unless you're, Chase has crazy, wild opinions all the time. But a lot of people agree on the names being Swift, CMC, Harris, and Javonte Williams in some order. But everybody has a different order. I think that's a fascinating one. I stand by that CMC is still the clear number 2, but clearly I'm in the minority there.
I have, Benjamin at 3. No, I'm just kidding. I have Taylor Swift and Williams all in the same tier right now. I know
you have Javonte Williams in the same tier as Jonathan Taylor.
And Swift, yes, as of right now. And obviously I have Jonathan Taylor's 101.
He's gonna have an aneurysm.
I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. But I
haven't seen this much hype for someone that hasn't done this much since Cam Akers last year, to be quite honest.
What did Jonathan Taylor do in his
we would have been
year?
The man tore his Achilles, and they were like, yeah, you get every snap in a playoff game.
And he looked incredibly average. Dude,
who cares if he's going to get every snap? Literally, who cares?
and I feel like that's what happens with the Broncos next year, but it really depends on, head coach and stuff. So I could move Javonte Williams down a tier this week, but I still feel like I love Swift. I love the passability. I love the direction the team is going. I love the offense. Anyways.
You love Swift's offense or Javonte's offense? I'm sorry.
I was talking about Swift for that last part. I love the direction that the offense is going. I don't love the offense yet. Okay. I have Najee Harris really far down somewhere. So that's the only one that doesn't belong in the same tier for me.
So you know what's weird?
So why on Najee? Because I don't like Najee. I think he kind of sucks, but I also don't really care that he sucks. Like he's going to get a million touches.
And I was thinking about Najee Harris yesterday on the drive to work. I was spacing out, and I was thinking, look, I've been too rough on the kid. His efficiency obviously was awful, but yes. That's because he's tied to a quarterback that is absolutely no threat and an offensive line that's pretty bad. If he continues to get the volume and sees just a small spike in efficiency, he's going to be a top 3 running back next year.
Maybe.
The only thing I'd expect to see a decrease in is, I don't expect him to see the amount of targets that he did because
the beginning of the year.
Any quarterback that can throw is not going to continue to dump off to the running back for 3 yards on 3rd and 7.
Here's my question, and I'll put my biases out there. Like, I love Swift as a prospect. He was my RB1 in the class, even over Taylor before the draft. Like, I loved Swift all year. I've always been ahead of consensus on Swift. You can literally see my rankings from last frickin' February when I had Swift at RB4. However, I have Najee Harris above DeAndre Swift right now. My issue with Swift, if we're going to knock Harris for efficiency, and Shane outlined why that might be an irresponsible thing to do, but if we are, I mean, DeAndre Swift was like the worst runner in the NFL last year. Like if you look at rushing yards over expectation, no one rushed for less yards or no one rushed for more yards under expectation than DeAndre Swift last year. Like, so I just think, to me, it's like, if we hand wave efficiency, on the guys that we do like, I just don't want to risk being inconsistent. And the difference is that even though Najee Harris seemingly was terrible last year, A, he had a really bad O-line. Swift actually had a pretty good O-line. And B, no one ever took Harris' carries away. I mean, Swift was still splitting carries with Williams, with Craig Reynolds. Like, if they are both bad at running the ball, which maybe they aren't, like, plenty of people have pointed out why running back efficiency stats are meaningless. But if they are both some way inferior at rushing the ball, or at least not elite at it, the Steelers didn't care at all, and the Lions seem to care. So that would be my question about it.
So I have multiple reasons why I have Swift up front. We talked about the offensive line, it's still developing offensive line that should be one of the best in the league going into 2022 for run blocking purposes. They should have some weapons, right? Because defenses actually played a certain type of defense up against the Lions. You have prevent defense. You also have contain defenses where you blitz one guy and run blitz, and then you have another guy follow up to cover the holes to make sure that running backs don't get the yardage necessary on 1st and 2nd down to create 3rd and shorts. So Swift faced that the entire year when he did run. However, the Lions knew that they weren't going anywhere this year. That was very obvious as to how they were throwing guys on IR. They were giving people time off, and for that situation, we saw Swift get enough to still be able to develop, but he was still held back enough to not get injured, injured significantly, which was great. The injuries that he dealt with were temporary injuries that should not temper his expectations moving forward. But the big reason why I don't like Najee Harris over Swift is I've had this theory for probably about 5 years now, where if you don't take hits at the college level, or if you're bigger than most guys, more physical than most guys, whatever it is, like, you don't take the same amount of hits. If you're going one-on-one with a guy, you're not going to take the same hit as you would if 3 guys would hit you and drill you into the ground. Najee Harris was vicious this year, right? He was vicious, man. He was breaking tackles. He was doing everything necessary to gain an extra 2 yards on every single carry. He was also getting hit, and he wasn't not protecting his own body. We've seen it with quarterbacks such as RG3. We've seen it just this past couple of years with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who never got hit in college. So he did not know how to take a hit. And then all of a sudden you're seeing him go up for, jump balls that were essentially a 0-yard game and getting drilled while he's up high, like getting drilled straight into the ground. There's certain players that do not know how to take hits. I think that Najee Harris is being a little bit too ballsy, and I think that these hits that he's taking could temper his overall outlook moving forward. And so that's why I'm off of Najee Harris. His efficiency is not going to be there next year, no matter how much we want it to be. They're not going to improve on the quarterback situation with the salary cap. They still need to get an offensive line. There's too many pieces that need to be put into place. And Najee Harris should not be sure, he might be the focal point, but I need efficiency and I need volume. I don't want just one or the other.
Okay, well, you're being greedy. Sometimes you take what you can get. Look,
not the top 3 players.
I mean, the harder thing is to get is probably the volume, right? And we know Harris is guaranteed the volume. And if their quarterback situation is somehow worse next year or the same, Well, why is that going to change? Like, are you going to put the game? The Steelers aren't going to put the game in Mason Rudolph's hands over Najee Harris. Mason Rudolph will just be handing off to Najee Harris.
Stop this madness. They're not going to start Mason Rudolph.
I know. Well, Dwayne Haskins. They're probably going to end up with Jimmy G. I mean, because I've mocked him everywhere.
That'd be fine.
I've sent Jimmy G everywhere that needs a quarterback.
I also have been stashing Jimmy G, which it makes me feel sick. But I've been adding him. He's now my third most owned Dynasty quarterback.
Hey, it's not about who we like on a personal level, right? And that's the thing in Dynasty, right? I don't have to like the player. The community, as long as the community likes him and he's a fantasy viable asset, that's all that matters. Like, I think Michael Carter is a trash can, but guess what? The Jets don't, and the fantasy community doesn't. So I'll trade for him just like I did Jimmy J.
Let me ask a quick question for you guys as well. Like, when it comes to the rankings, I rank based on other people's opinions of players as well, because I think that there are certain values that you can get from dynasty rankings. If it's regular season rankings, I'm going to rank however I feel. But I feel like your dynasty ranking should also include what other people value players at. Shane, I mean, you literally read rankings from, nonstop, smart people all the time. You pretty much base your entire analysis on rankings, right, Shane?
And landing spots.
No, landing spots and rankings. No, when I did rankings, and part of the reason I always had trouble with rankings is I couldn't even figure out my own criteria. I'd go, well, it's Dynasty, so really I should be looking at for 5 years. And I'm like, yeah, but really, shouldn't it just be aren't the next 2 years going to be smashing? And does this guy have trade value? But does that really matter when I'm ranking him for production? That's why rankings, it's too black and white for me. That's why I don't like them. I like my gray area.
I'll answer this question, and I know that we're almost at an hour, but I think you brought up an interesting point, Chase, about taking into account market value. So what I would say is I don't take into account the current market value as much. To me, I think you rank based on how you want your players, and then you align those ranks against the current market, and that's how you find out, guys you want to be overweight on, guys you want to be underweight on. But I do think it's important to look at certain archetypes of market value, because I think that there are just these people who are out there on Twitter that are always whinging about, why can't player X ever get respect? It's okay, but we all know why they can't get respect. We know that it's happening. And to me, if you think you've unlocked some secret of value where you're able to locate these guys that are undervalued by the market, and then you're content to ride out their production forever, then go for it. But if you are looking at flips, I mean, we know that running backs who run in the 4.6s are just not going to be as respected by the market as others. We know that if you're drafted on day 3, that your value has a glass ceiling, right? We've seen this with Aaron Jones and Austin Eckler, where the entirety of their first contract, even when they were putting up the same numbers as other running backs in their draft class, like Cook and Kamara, they always had a value drop because they had a glass ceiling. And if you're looking at them as a flip candidate, you have to acknowledge in foresight, looking at an Elijah Mitchell, for instance, right now, or a Michael Carter, you have to say, okay, these players, you can convince yourself now, Elijah Mitchell, he's a much better bet than Travis Etienne, right? Because of injury, production, whatever. But you also have to know that Elijah Mitchell has a glass ceiling, because the situational factors, they don't just go away, honestly, until you get a second contract. And so you can sit here 2 years from now and say, why is he hated on? But if you're ever hoping to flip a profit, you have to know that he's actually a lot closer to his value ceiling than an ETN, for instance, is, who had the first round draft capital, where should things break right for him, he can rebound a lot higher. And to me, if you're not taking that into account, you're being a little bit irresponsible with it. So, and similarly, we talk about wide receiver aging curves, right? With wide receivers, after they are past 27, that's a point where you might want to buy them for production, but they only get downward pressure. If you look at the keep trade cut graph of a Keenan Allen or Mike Evans, when bad things happen, it goes like this. When they're doing good, it's just this. They don't get to go back up. That's not how it works once you're 28, 29, 30. So I do think that those types of things where you have to look proactively at how the market will respond to certain players, you have to take that into account.
All right, so let's go ahead and hop onto my rankings. So we're just going to do the top 10 because we're running short on time.
Yes.
You guys can bash the shit out of this, however you would like. I'm sure that you will. And, similar to what Jacob talked about, the clusters and whatnot, I like to rank in, tiers, obviously. So I have my top tiers of 3 players that I would like to take at a startup.
There are way too many running backs in these rankings.
Yeah,
I know that you like your wide receivers.
But Jesus Christ, you can't take DeAndre Swift over Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, or AJ Brown. This is just trash. Alvin Kamara at 10. What are you, fucking nuts? Antonio Gibson at 7?
So,
oh my God, Dalvin Cook at 9? What is this, the land of the old running backs? Jesus Christ, dude.
So essentially, right, you have two different ways that most leagues are going to draft, right? You're either going to draft youth or you're going to draft to win now. Essentially, I like to draft to win now, but in case, I have to fall back, I normally trade out of these spots. So if you see a bunch of these wide receivers, right, that are kicking off, in the first couple of picks where they're youth fulfilled, I don't mind jumping up and taking some of these players, some of these running backs early, especially because you still have, like you guys just brought up, wide receivers who are 27, 28, 29 that are still giving you top level production that will fall to the third and fourth round. So if I'm going to sit here, right, and I'm going to build a team that's going to win now, and I need consistency, I want consistency out of the top end running backs that I have. Meanwhile, I want the wide receivers that could end up retiring it. Guess what? If you win now, in most leagues that you play for money, that'll end up floating you for at least 4, 5, 6 years, right? Like that winning for 1 year will float you for multiple years. So I want to get the players that can help me win the most now. And I think that resides in the running back position.
Then why not get Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill?
They will fall to you in most cases. I mean, maybe not Tyreek Hill, but Devontae Adams is going to fall to you in the third round or so in this upcoming draft because you do have all these wide receivers ahead of you. So that's why I end up having these players ranked the way that I do because, hey, if I don't get one of these top 3 running backs, then I'm probably not going to be playing as much for this year. However, it can still fall my way if one of these other running backs will end up making to me in the second round. So when it comes to the rankings wise, which player do you guys hate the most? Which player do you guys like the most?
Gibson. Gibson, I hate the most.
Yeah, that's
Antonio Gibson. So I was I never had him 7th overall. That's clinically insane. However, I was pretty on board with Antonio Gibson coming into this year. I was quite on board with him, especially in best aggressively. The issue is it's now been 2 years. He has never been the 3-down workhorse except when J.D. McKissic has been out, right? Now, they might bring back J.D. McKissic or they may bring in another 3rd-down running back, right? But they have not ever shown us that they actually want to use Gibson in 2-minute drill situations and long down and distance, except when everybody else is injured. Maybe that changes this year. Also possible to change this year. He's a 3rd-round running back who has contributed very little on his carries. He's been a middlingly efficient running back. And he's drafted in the 3rd round. They're not that invested in him. They might bring in more carry competition. He hasn't faced carry competition in 2 years. It's possible that he faces more of it now. And then, even if he has a solid year this year, what's he looking at second contract wise? To me, Gibson faces a lot of the same risk factors and has a lot of the things that he needs to go right that like a Josh Jacobs does, but he costs like twice as much. I would way rather just kick the can down the road and take a Jacobs or a Montgomery if I really, really feel the need to have a 15-point per game running back on my roster. That's the one I hate the most. I would take Cook over him. If I am going running back, I would take Cook over him. I would take Dobbins over Gibson. I would take Akers over Gibson. And most of all, I would take like 10 wide receivers over Gibson.
All right, Shay, where are you sitting?
Yeah, Javonte Williams way too high for me. Gibson shouldn't even be in the top 15, probably lower than that, to be quite honest with you. This isn't super flex, right? This is just position players.
Yeah, it's just position. Well,
also, where the fuck is Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, Kyle Pitts. If you're looking at positional scarcity, like Kyle Pitts easily should be up here before Antonio Gibson. Like it's not even.
You want to know where I have Kyle Pitts in my 1 QB ranks, Shane?
It should be top 3.
Okay, I have him at 4. I have him behind Taylor, Jefferson, and Chase. That's it.
That's fine. No,
Pat Freiermuth could actually be the tight end.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Pat Freiermuth, that mediocre fuck.
Just stop it. I mean, other than, DeAndre Swift, who I like, he's too high. I take Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson over every running back, to be quite honest with you, even considering the trade value. Well, no, I got to be honest with you. Everyone's hip to the whole running backs are deadly, so I don't want them on my roster. I need to trade them as soon as I can because they're a fucking grenade. So that's the problem with roster and Jonathan Taylor right now. Is like, in theory, I should be able to trade him straight up for like Jamar Chase plus. No, No one will do that. No one in any league that I'm in will do anything remotely like that. They will laugh at me and then call me names. So other than Antonio Gibson, Christian
Wait, were you
McCaffrey,
referring to Jamie's comment, Shane?
No. ETN over Gibson.
Oh no, I would take Gibson over ETN.
Yeah, I'll take Gibson. I like Gibson. I just don't think he's clearly not a top 7 positional player asset like Chase.
Yeah, I agree, Dave. I'm fully in agreement with clipping me calling Pat Freiermuth that mediocre.
So no, I don't like your rankings, but that's okay. You're a little too running back heavy.
Yeah, I'm definitely running back heavy.
Yeah.
I'm somebody that believes I can find wide receiver in the 4th or 5th round. Like a Colin Johnson, Gabriel Davis, somebody like that. But
I hope you mean of a rookie draft and not of a startup.
No, so
out here clicking Colin Johnson in round 4 of the startup.
I personally believe, like I said, I already put my argument out there for DeAndre Swift, of course, and Javonte Williams. I think that AJ Brown is the wide receiver 1 moving forward. I think that he shows the consistency needed when not hurt in order to perform that. Jamar Chase inconsistency worries me just a little bit, along with the target competition from T. Higgins moving forward. Justin Jefferson I love, but I don't love the quarterback situation. So as we talked about in a tier, I think that both Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson have question marks. Meanwhile, AJ Brown does not have the question marks necessary. And I think that with Derrick Henry getting mileage in, I believe that AJ Brown will continue to see an uptick in targets. As for Antonio Gibson, with poor offensive line blocking, Antonio Gibson has remained extremely relevant overall.
He has not had poor offensive line. They led the entire NFL in line yards per carry this year.
I'm telling you right now, from watching the games, it wasn't even relatively close. Ron Rivera would
got this
run
hand in the dirt.
He would. I'm telling you, he just literally ran behind 10 people pushing him. He created yards when yards weren't available. It wasn't even relatively close. The yards created compared to what most other people would consider yards created. Antonio Gibson was doing work back there, so I love that. And then, of course, Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara are up there because I think they still have trade value to where people consider them off of name value, and that's why I would prefer to have them. I've actually looked up trades for Dalvin Cook, which is why I kept him up here.
Yeah, can you let me know, by the way?
Multiple first-round picks for Dalvin Cook. That's why I have them so high.
Freaking where? Because I have Cook. It's actually weird. I have no second contract running backs ever on my rosters. I think I have 1 Henry in 36 leagues. I have 0 Zeke. I have 0 Kamara, 0 Eckler. All these guys, 0 Jones. But I randomly have 5 Cooks because it seemed like everywhere that I was trying to add a running back, a vet running back at the deadline, everybody wanted to trade the domestic abuser. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll have to do it. So I have all these Cooks, and oh my God, I'm not even sure if I get a single first-round pick for him. People wouldn't even offer me the 110.
No, you got.
People are like, I'll give you Rondell Moore, but you have to add a third.
Don't forget, we have maybe 10% of the fantasy community on Twitter. Now, the people that want to follow good fantasy football content are on Twitter, and most likely the people that you're in leagues with also follow Twitter. However, people that are in ESPN leagues, people that are in these Yahoo leagues, the majority of them do not spend them
That's true.
all
I
the
can't
time
comment on
Twitter.
the ESPN league people.
So they still have value, and for the average people that are listening, of course, and since we're in a massive Facebook group with 28,000 people, yes, we still have the average fans who will value Dalvin Cook. So if you have Dalvin Cook, don't give up on him yet if you're on Facebook. With that being said, let's go ahead.
I'm going to put Dalvin Cook on Facebook Marketplace and see if I'm able to find a better offer.
Dude, Derrick Henry is still top 5 in most people's dynasty rankings for Facebook. I swear to God.
You're honestly you're not wrong. Every time last year I posted rankings, someone was always like, "Why is Derrick Henry not number 1?" I'm like, "Because he's a million years old."
Remember? Dude, hey, Shane, we're not kidding. We did our dynasty rankings, right? I'm going to throw them on Facebook. And we put them on Facebook. I say that we had 10 people do them last year, Jacob, right? About 10 people.
Nobody
put Derrick Henry. I think somebody put Derrick Henry 12. And every comment was, why is Derrick Henry not number 1? So you can only imagine he's still top 5 this year because he got hurt. He only played half a season. So the wear and tear is not as bad because he only played half a season. And guess what? He had a more amazing season this year than he did last year. So, of course, for Dynasty leagues,
drafted
he's still
in
number
best ball
1.
drafts. And supposedly the Sharps play on Underdog. He's still being drafted as the 102 in 2022 best ball drafts right now.
Right. Well, it's not just the Sharps that are playing on there because Underdog has flooded every podcast in the world with some kind of arrangement. So literally everyone that listens to any podcast at all, there's like a nation of 100,000 fantasy football podcast listeners just on there that have never played best ball. And they're just like, sure, this podcast that I like says play on it. So I'm going to. Hey, and don't forget to use your promo code TradesHQ on
It's Dynasty Intervention, damn it. All right, let's go ahead and get out of here. This has been a fun episode. Definitely. Shane, this is the most informant I've ever heard from you.
Is this a Matt Damon movie?
Informative.
That's the word I was looking for. Informative. I can't hear myself talk sometimes. No, I'm just kidding. I literally fucked that word up. All right, so let's go ahead and get out of here. Shane, where can we find you, man?
You find me on the Twitters at Shane is the worst, on Dynasty Trades in 5 on YouTube, Dynasty Trades HQ, Manic and Chill sometimes, obviously here every Wednesday, writing for Dynasty League Football. For now,
are we sure that that's the name?
I mean, Dynasty Spurts. They just got bought, so who knows? And
NBC Sports
Data.
Edge.
Well, I already gave them the idea for Dilf.
You did give them the name for Delph. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
All right, Jacob. Where can we find you, man? What you got going on?
You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty Leagues I Like to Fuck. You can find me on Twitter at FF_RTDB. I write for playerprofiler.com. You can find the Pareto Principles, my weekly DFS column. This will be probably my second last DFS column for Player Profiler of the year, coming up for Conference Championship Week. You can find Chase and I talk about DFS on the Little Dip all last night. That's up on YouTube, same channel that you're watching us right now. And you can find now the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast is back in full swing. We had our first episode of season 2 last night with Tom and with Billy. We'll be going every Tuesday night I think we'll be doing 9:30 Eastern time for the last couple of weeks that I'm still doing DFS stuff with Chase, and then we'll move it up a little bit earlier after that. And of course, the Fantasy Walkabout also back in action on the Full Tilt Dynasty Network with Tom and Tom on Saturdays. Otherwise, hit me up on Twitter.
Yeah, and you guys can go check out all of our content over there at fantasyintervention.com. We're going to be doing a little bit of construction on the website over the next few weeks. Going to be revamping a few things and kind of taking a little bit different approach. We'll see what happens over there at fantasyintervention.com. You guys can still find all our content over there at youtube.com/fantasyintervention and join our circle_ over there on Twitter. You guys can go find all of my content over there at ff_intervention. Of course, Trophy Smack. God, the shit that we have rolling out Trophy Smack. It's going to be absolutely intense. Like I'm very excited for it. And then, of course, you guys can go check out my articles for DFS for the remaining part of the year on playerprofiler.com, along with a couple different player descriptions that I have. I was just talking to Matt earlier today about that. So thank you guys for listening, and thank you all for letting us intervene with your fantasy football life. We're out.